Somewhere amidst the gentle hush of sand and river, beneath a sky washed soft blue by dusk, the memory of ancient Egypt lies quiet and infinitely patient. A civilization that arose in the darkness between deserts and unfolded, like rains drawn from eternity, beside the Nile. Let us drift with those waters, letting the thousand-year echoes settle over us like linen, as we peer softly into 3 millennia of tranquil endurance and cosmic order. Consider, for a moment, the arc of time as it bends along the banks of the Nile, 3,000 years, lengthening and receding, silent and sun-baked, marked not by sudden conquest, but by patient, rhythmic cycles of life. Ancient Egypt emerged in this slow corridor, its people drawn together by the river's pulse, finding communion in the reliable rise of waters and the gentle settling of silt upon shadowed fields. In that particular hush, a civilization took form, its monuments stretching upward, its language curling softly upon stone and papyrus, and its beliefs shaping not merely what was built, but how each person lived within the immensity of earth and sky. The story of ancient Egypt, as it unfolds beneath your closing eyes, is not a tale of sudden flames or clashing armies, but rather of quiet continuity, luminous order, and the slow radiance of human curiosity reaching, always, just beyond the horizon's edge. Before we drift off, a quiet note: if these journeys help you sleep, subscribing is a gentle way to keep them coming. Now, settle in, let your eyes grow heavy, and let's begin. In the far beginnings, well before any pyramid drew shadow across the earth, the Nile carved its patient channel through a dry and empty landscape. With each cycle of flood and retreat, it left behind soft, black soil, a rare and precious gift in a world of wind-blown sand. Over endless generations, small communities gathered at the river's grace, their mud brick walls clustering for comfort and protection, their days and nights given rhythm by the rise and fall of distant water, until settlements emerged, stretching thin along the banks, never straying far from the nourishment of silt and the cool, flowing promise of life. As the centuries unwound, these scattered villages began to knit themselves softly together through trade and shared ritual, their people moving with the pace of oars and sandals, bearing jars of grain, beads, and woven linen along dusty paths. Slowly, out of the mist and distant neigh of cattle, 2 main realms took shape: Upper Egypt winding through the south, where the river narrowed and cut more swiftly, and Lower Egypt fanning into a wide, lush delta to the north. For a long time, these 2 lands looked across the water at each other, their destinies entwined yet distinct, their alliances and rivalries echoing in the quiet space before unity. Somewhere in that blue twilight of prehistory, a great joining occurred, what later memory would call the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. Scientists believe a series of powerful leaders, known to us by names half remembered in legend and sign, slowly subdued their rivals and gathered power beneath a single crown, the double crown, symbolizing unity. The world grew larger in the silence that followed, boundaries once rigid dissolving into a single, measured kingdom stretching for hundreds of miles, always between the hush of desert and water's embrace. Now the story enters its first golden hush, the Old Kingdom, an age when order felt newly possible, and the hands of artisans, architects, and scribes found a single unified purpose. This is when the most iconic monuments, the pyramids, began their slow, deliberate ascent from the bedrock. Consider, for a moment, the hush of early morning at a pyramid's base, the cold stone warming under pale sun, teams of laborers moving with precision and care. The rhythm of their labor echoing through centuries in the texture of limestone blocks. The pyramids, especially those near the ancient capital of Memphis, have stood for almost 5,000 years, their angles softened by desert winds, their interiors still cool and silent, pierced only by faint shafts of light. The great pyramid complexes were more than royal tombs. They were stages for rituals affirming the eternal cycle, meant to guarantee that harmony, Maat, would reign long after memory faded. Every stone, every corridor, and every carved prayer reflected the belief that, even in death, balance and order must endure. Yet in time, the Old Kingdom faded into what historians call the First Intermediate Period, a time when central authority ebbed silently away, and local governors, known as nomarchs, ruled their regions with quiet autonomy. Fields continued to sway under the breath of the wind, and temple fires still flickered at dusk, but somewhere in the hush, the great unity began to loosen. Drought may have brought hardships, and the old rhythms wavered, but the Nile's deep presence persisted, its waters still promising cycles of return. From this interval of uncertainty, the Middle Kingdom slowly emerged, not with sudden blare, but with the steady, determined work of leaders who restored coherence to the land. The capital shifted south, temples grew busier, and Egypt's people again found reassurance in a state's gentle hand. Art and literature flourished. Stories were told in gentle hieroglyphs on scrolls of papyrus, their surface cool and supple under the scribe's reed. The gods were pictured not as distant forces, but as beings close enough to hear whispered prayers. The Middle Kingdom, though less dazzling than what came before, offered its own kind of comfort. A time of realistic statuary, of fortresses along the southern frontier, of small, earnest tombs and temples where the light gathered in muted gold along painted walls. Here, the stories told by Egypt's people began to reach outward, traveling with the river, mapping new boundaries, the pulse of daily life as steady as the hush between sunrise and nightfall on the water. And yet no peace is truly permanent. As the rhythm of dynasties shifted, the control of the pharaohs weakened, and chaos again approached on quiet feet. This was the Second Intermediate Period, a time not of collapse, but of quiet flux, as outsider groups known today as the Hyksos arrived in the Delta, their presence felt in new tools, foreign words, and distinct ways of building. They brought with them horses and the chariot, tools that rewrote the possibilities of movement and conflict along the ancient roads and fields. The Hyksos era did not erase what came before. Rather, it melted into Egyptian life like twilight merging with night. New ideas and technologies mingled with ancient traditions, and through a gradual, complex dance of exchange and resilience, a renewed Egyptian identity emerged from the mist. The noise of battle was minimal compared to the patience of adaptation, and eventually the tides of history turned again, as local rulers from Thebes gathered their energies to reclaim the unity of the land. With triumphant quiet, Egypt entered its third great age, the New Kingdom, an era stretching for centuries when temples rose vast and shadowed, columns and obelisks piercing the sun-bleached silence, and the names of certain pharaohs drifted, only half remembered through the soft dust of history. In this time, Egypt's power extended far beyond its own valley, its influence felt in distant lands, and yet life along the Nile retained its gentle, cyclical form. Harvest and flood, boat and home, all moved to the same deep river song. Consider for a moment the endless labor of temple construction, block upon block lifted and set in place, each wall shimmering in the golden hush of sunrise, every surface covered in color and story, meant not merely for the living, but for the unseen order, for the spirits believed to linger in darkness and light. These temples, cool and immense, were not silent. Inside, priests moved softly, tending to sacred rituals, burning myrrh and reciting prayers in voices barely above a whisper, so that even the gods might rest undisturbed. Adrift within that twilight are the memories of remarkable reigns. Some pharaohs became legends, their deeds shaped by the hands of scribes and storytellers. One leading idea is that, during the New Kingdom, royal women such as Hatshepsut rose quietly to power, guiding the country with calm resolve. Meanwhile, enigmatic figures like Akhenaten pursued new spiritual visions, shifting worship from many deities toward the lone radiance of the sun disk, Aten. These changes, gentle or jarring, reflected the ongoing struggle between tradition and innovation. Yet beneath every shifting crown and passing dynasty, the ordinary lives of farmers, fishermen, potters, and weavers continued, marked by the slow movement of seasons and the steady, familiar rise of the Nile. Their stories, scraps of linen and broken pottery, houses pressed from mud and sunlight, offer even now a sense of peace, a reminder that far more than kings or monuments, it was the gentle continuation of daily life that sustained Egypt through all change. Daily rituals were shaped by the elements, the cool hush before the river's flood, the dry heat of noon settling over baked earth, the gentle arrival of evening when shadows lengthened and the air carried the scent of distant water. Across these moments, Egyptians celebrated festivals of renewal, their songs and processions floating over night-cool fields, marked by flickers of torchlight, the quiet tolling of bronze bells, and the taste of bread baked from the river's true gift, the grain sown and gathered without hurry. And somewhere in the blue-black darkness, thoughts turned always to what lay beyond, the journey through death and the promise of life renewed. Akhit, the season of inundation, signaled rebirth not only for crops, but for souls as well. The art and writing left behind show an abiding hope, the circle of time, the eternal return of water and sun, the crossing to realms where hearts are weighed in silence, and spirits might rest forever in cool, green fields beyond the reach of drought. In the tombs hollowed deep into cliffs, or built as shining houses of eternity, the afterlife was painted with gentle hands and patient certainty. Walls shimmered with images of clear, slow water, lotus flowers opening in morning light, boats drifting among the reeds, visions of renewal, of the soul's safe passage through the dark waters of Juet, the underworld. In that silence, surrounded by offerings and prayers inscribed in delicate lines, the dead awaited the dawn, comforted by the certainty of cycles that would not be broken. This belief in balance, Maat, threaded its way through every aspect of Egyptian existence. It was not merely a law, but a living order, an equilibrium sensed in the calm pairing of river and sand, the even-handed judgment of scribes, the measured division of harvest stores, and the careful retelling of ancient stories by firelight. Even now, to listen for the logic of Egypt's long continuity is merely to feel the pull of balance, quietly enduring like the river's undisturbed current. Through flood and drought, feast and scarcity, the Nile's presence kept hearts steady. The scent of water after intense heat, the coolness of shaded courtyards at midday, these were small spells of survival, repeated for centuries, a kind of magic more powerful than any king's decree. The river's annual flood was anticipated as a gentle homecoming, and its quiet withdrawal in the months of receding waters marked the patient expectation of return, a rhythm as intimate and constant as breath itself. Yet the passage of so many centuries could not remain untouched by change. Over successive generations, Egypt's neighbors grew strong along the shifting windward trails, Nubians to the south, Libyans to the west, later Assyrians and Persians from even farther. Sometimes these new presences arrived suddenly, and sometimes slipped quietly across boundaries, their cultures blending, disputes resolving with less noise and more surrender, so that Egypt's story grew longer still. Its rivers of memory now swollen with tributaries from many lands. By the time the shadow of Greece fell lightly along the Nile, Egypt's own identity had softened and lengthened, its language adapting, its faiths winding together into new shapes beneath the gentle pressure of so much memory. The old temples, once fresh with paint and prayer, grew more silent, even as new stone columns rose in their midst. Somewhere in the hush of this era, the timeless and the transient became indistinguishable, order preserved in change, and change accepted as the enduring path forward. Greeks, and later the Romans, found in Egypt not merely wealth and grain, but an atmosphere of mystery, the slow, sweet scent of lotus in the heat, the echo of prayers to distant gods whose names lived on in whisper and shadow. Even in this mingling, the old cadence of the Nile, its cycles, its solemn rituals, burst quietly beneath the surface, shaping the lives of those who had never known an Egypt without the promise of returning water and the gentle renewal of dawn. For 3,000 years, Egypt's voice was neither shout nor battle cry, but something much quieter. The shuffle of feet in sandy courtyards, the song of birds at first light, the silent progress of boats along midnight water. Its history, rather than a line, is a gentle spiral, circling through patterns of building and forgetting, remembering and renewing, all linked by the perennial hush of the river's slow, guiding hand and the felt presence of the desert night. Hieroglyphs, carved and painted in delicate lines, offer us windows into vanished lives. Each sign, shaped by steady hands centuries apart, records the small textures of existence, the sound of a reed in the breeze, the feel of cool stone underfoot, the sight of distant fires burning just above the horizon. In all their grace, these symbols carry a message across distances of time, an invitation to linger in the spaces between words, and to feel history breathing quietly beneath the present. In the afterglow of so much memory, the ancient language of Egypt drifted ever further from daily use, replaced slowly by Greek, then Arabic. Temples and tombs slipped beneath sand or stood in broken sunlight, half remembered by those who passed. And yet the shape of Egypt's order, its faith in cycles, its tenacity in building, its cosmic sense of patience, remained almost palpable, suspended in the silent distances between starlight and the hush of water's flow. Science continues to uncover new shadows and gleams in Egypt's past, probing dry sand and scentless scroll, finding everyday objects set gently beside the bodies of the dead, testing pigments in the lightless quiet of empty tombs. The story is not static. Ancient Egypt keeps speaking slowly, as fragments of wall and faded ink carry their timeless messages into modern understanding, and as each new discovery, never sudden, always layered, adds depth to the tranquil tapestry of its history. Consider now, in that broad arc of human experience, the scale of what endures, the slow adjustment of calendars to the moods of the river, the near-invisible cultural exchanges whispered in the shape of a borrowed word, the echo of a silenced song beneath painted ceilings. Ancient Egypt's genius was not speed, but stillness, not a pursuit of novelty, but of continuity so complete that centuries could pass in the peace of almost unbroken ritual. Tonight, as you rest, let your imaginings drift over those silent fields beside the river, the cool stone roads extending into moonlight, the lost reflections of torches on water. In that place between sleep and waking, the wisdom of Egypt persists, resilient, cyclical, rooted in the certainty that darkness always gives way to dawn, and that quiet effort, repeated calmly across time, can endure longer than any single life or monument. Somewhere far from the glare and hurry of the modern world, the slow, unsettled depths of 3,000 years remain, ready to unfold whenever you pause to imagine them. Each rise and fall along history's tranquil river offers not only knowledge but comfort, a reminder that the most lasting beauty comes not from sudden change, but from patient, unhurried devotion to order and the gentle embrace of mystery. Let yourself dissolve into that profound hush, where sand and water mingle beneath an undying sky, where time moves not in leaps, but in soft, undulating curves. Ancient Egypt, in all its vastness, whispers that nothing truly passes away, all is woven quietly together, strand by strand, and carried onward by the cool, certain current of memory. Consider for a moment the veiled architecture of ritual in ancient Egypt, where ceremony suffused every season, every harvest, every gentle inundation of the Nile's banks, shaping a rhythm of devotion that became as dependable as the movement of the stars overhead, and as measured as the slow migration of sunlight across temple walls, bringing continuity and calm across generations whose names have vanished into silence. Somewhere in that hush between flood and sand, the ancient Egyptians shaped their own music, calm rhythms played on hollow reeds and simple drums, the low chant of a priest tracing echoes through cavernous stone corridors, and the ceaseless pulse of water and wind, forming an unhurried symphony that gently accompanied labor, worship, and rest beneath an arching sky. And yet, beneath all ceremony and song, the people of this long riverland lived daily lives, cultivating barley in the soft morning fog, weaving linen with careful hands, baking bread from golden grains warmed by sunlight, and tending fires whose glow lingered long after dusk, each motion connecting them in a silent continuum to ancestors whose presence was felt more closely than the cool stone underfoot. Time itself seemed to slow in the shadow of these colossal monuments, pyramids and tombs that were conceived not as places of finality, but of passage, where the gentle interplay between light and darkness mirrored their beliefs about existence, renewal, and the eternal procession of days along the river's dark, glimmering mirror. Envision, as dusk settles upon the wide, silvered river, the quiet labor of ancient hands shaping mud and straw into strong, sun-baked bricks, building low homes and high walls alike. It was in this gentle collaboration with earth and water that communities grew, each one nestled close along the nurturing ribbon of the Nile, relying on its regular floods to draw the contours of their seasons and the boundaries of their lives. Somewhere within the slow cadence of sun and shadow, artisans traced out celestial maps on deep blue ceilings, their pigments lingering softly through centuries. In this blending of cosmology and daily bread, the Egyptians wove the sky into their temples, believing the stars themselves were the souls of their ancestors returning home, so that every night brought a silent procession of memory above quiet stone. Consider, too, the passage through time of Egyptian music, never heard by modern ears, but imagined in gentle echoes, reeds and strings drawing out delicate melodies amidst candlelit silence, each note a whisper to the gods and a comfort to those who labored, so that even the simplest tools and songs became small vessels of hope drifting downstream into the unknown. And yet, beneath all the grand sweep of empire and the careful order of ritual, the Nile itself remained unchanged and indifferent, its waters flowing quietly through moonlit emptiness, their surface broken only by the silhouette of a lone boat, reminding us that, across eras of splendor and silence alike, the river was both witness and keeper of all that Egypt dared to dream. This has been a gentle journey through the tranquil centuries of ancient Egypt, a world defined not by noise or haste, but by the ever-flowing river, the silent architecture of stone, and the resilient, everyday patience of those who watched the sun rise and fall through countless seasons. As you settle further into restful darkness, allow the textures of sand, the shimmer of water, and the faint drift of memory to guide you gently into deeper sleep. Remember, the quiet pulse of history endures in the still places, waiting for attentive hearts and calm minds to notice. In that ongoing silence, as the Nile once did, may new dreams gently arise. If tonight's calm voyage through Egypt's ancient hush has brought a sense of ease, consider subscribing for more journeys in gentle wonder, and allow your thoughts to drift into peaceful, uninterrupted rest.